Good afternoon to all the students. So, here today we are going to deal with the chapter Living World. Living World, though the chapter seems to be very easy and very basic, but from this chapter when the questions are being asked in the statement based format or in the match the following format, there will be some difficulty to answer such questions. So, to go beyond that, like to answer all the type of questions comfortably, and in one or the other case living world is a basic fundamental unit for the easy understanding of cell. The unit of life might be plant growth and development, might be if we understand taxonomic categories here, it will be easy in learning with morphology of flowering plants. So then this chapter lays a foundation to learn the easy chapters which we are having in NCERT 11 and 12. First, we need to know the fundamental insights of this chapter. What are the fundamental insights that we need to learn from this chapter? First, from the living world, we will be exercising about defining and characteristic features of living. What are the characteristic features of living and what are the defining features of living? What is meant by characteristic features? Those features which are present both in the living and non-living things as well, and the features which are not present in all the living organisms. Such features are addressed as characteristic features of living, and those features which are observed in all the living organisms without any exceptions, such features are known as defining features of living. Those features which are observed in all the living organisms, all living organisms. Those features which are present both in the living and non-living things and which are absent or excised from few living organisms, they are not present in all the living organisms, such features are addressed as characteristic features of living. And classification of living organisms, like how the living organisms are classified based on what aspects. And then we are going to learn all the components of taxonomy. What are the components of taxonomy? Characterization, identification, nomenclature, and classification. Got it, ma? First is characterization and then identification, nomenclature and then classification. First, characterization. You will characterize the living organism. Any living organism, it might be unicellular, multicellular, plant or animal. You will first characterize the living organisms by identifying all the characteristic features, like me describing its morphological features, anatomical features, describing all the morphological, anatomical and complete features of the living organisms. That work comes under characterization. Second is identification. After characterizing all the morphological or the anatomical features of the living organism, in simple terms, after exploring the complete diversity of a single living organism, both external and internally, after exploring a living organism, then we need to identify it, taking either any standard herbaria or the existing living organisms, or identified species. Okay. So, first you will characterize it, characterize the living organisms, both external morphological characters, internal anatomical characters will be completely analyzed and drafted, and then this will be compared or identified taking the help of standard herbaria, after which you will name it. That comes under nomenclature. Under nomenclature, you will learn a major type of nomenclature which is introduced by Carolus Linnaeus, that is binomial nomenclature, which is very important, many a times asked question. Okay, so binomial nomenclature you will be learning under nomenclature. After which you will classify the living organisms into 7 obligate categories, categories. Got it? So, first is what ma? Characterization. You will analyze both internal external features and you will draft all the content of the living organism. Then identification, identifying the species taking any standard herbaria, and then nomenclature. In nomenclature you will be using the standard nomenclature, that is binomial nomenclature, which is proposed by Carolus Linnaeus, and last is classification. Based on that you will classify the organisms into 7 obligate categories from species to kingdom. This is the whole of this chapter. Along with this, at the end you will be learning on taxonomic aids. Taxonomic aids is very important topic, but then it is eliminated from NEET, but you have it for MCET. Okay. So, today we are going to learn the characteristic and defining features of living, binomial nomenclature, and difference between taxonomy and systematics. Let us get started with the first feature. Like, what are the characteristic features of living? Growth and reproduction. These both are considered as characteristic features of living. I will tell you why. Growth is measured in 2 terms. One is increase in number and increase in mass of the body. Growth is measured in 2 terms. One is increase in number of cells, and second is increase in mass of the body, Anything is addressed as what? Growth only. Either increase in cell number or increase in the mass of body is known as growth. Got it? So, this growth, this type of growth, that increase in the mass, is observed in external features also, like glaciers and mountain. They will be increasing in their mass and size every year. So, that is also considered as growth, right? So, as growth is observed in the extrinsic features also, like extrinsic things also, piling up of the things like glaciers and mountains, growth is addressed as the characteristic features of living, as it is observed in non-living things as well. Next, reproduction. Reproduction is also known as characteristic feature, because reproduction you can consider both asexual reproduction, sexual reproduction. We have 2 different modes of reproduction. When sexual method of reproduction is considered, not all living organisms will exhibit this feature. If you consider mules or sterile honeybees or sterile human couple, those are living organisms, but they do not reproduce. Okay. Reproduction means what? Producing a fertile offspring. What is reproduction? Producing a fertile offspring. Producing a fertile offspring is known as reproduction. This is not observed in all the living organisms. So, then growth and reproduction are both characteristic features of living. Third is metabolism. Fourth, cellular organization. Fifth, consciousness. These are defining features of living which are present in all the living organisms. These are defining features. Defining features of living observed in all the living organisms. Got it? So, this is these are the characteristic and defining features of living. First, let us learn on growth. As we have discussed, growth is nothing but increase in cell number or size or height or mass of the body is addressed as growth. For example, we have 2 different types of growth. Let me give you that flow chart once. Growth is of 2 types. Intrinsic growth and extrinsic growth. Intrinsic growth, it occurs both in unicellular and multicellular organisms. In unicellular organisms, you can see growth and reproduction are mutually inclusive. In unicellular organisms, growth and reproduction are mutually inclusive. What does this mean? Growth and reproduction are mutually inclusive, because growth is measured as increase in cell number also, right? Unicellular organisms will just undergo the binary fission and they will increase their cell number. They will just undergo the binary fission and they will increase the cell number. Thereby, they are undergoing reproduction, parallelly growth. That is the reason in unicellular organisms, growth is mutually inclusive event. Whereas in multicellular organisms, if we have to consider in plants and animals, multicellular organisms, growth is exclusive, mutually exclusive. Why? Because to reproduce any multicellular organism, be it plant or animal, it has to reach up to the juvenile stage. It has to cross the juvenile stage and it has to enter the reproductive phase. Then only they can reproduce. Here growth and reproduction are not mutually inclusive events. To enter into the reproductive phase, the organism has to grow and cross up to juvenile phase. Multicellular organism in plants, if you see, the growth is indefinite or indeterminate. Growth is indefinite or indeterminate. In animals, if you see, growth is definite. It will be only for certain period of time. Got it? So here in multicellular organism, growth is mutually exclusive. In plants, you will see indefinite or indeterminate growth, which grows throughout their lifetime. This is because we have learned from anatomy, right? It has both primary meristems and secondary meristematic tissues. That is the reason plant grows throughout their lifetime. But animals' growth is restricted to certain period of time, and that is why in animals we will call growth of what type? Definite growth or determinate growth. Extrinsic growth, you can see it in mountains, glaciers, and glaciers, which increases its mass. The mass of the body will be increased every year. So this is about growth. First, intrinsic and extrinsic growth. Intrinsic growth happens in unicellular and multicellular organisms. In unicellular organisms, growth and reproduction are mutually inclusive. In multicellular organisms, it is mutually exclusive, because to enter into the reproductive phase, it has to cross on the juvenile stage. And in plants, the growth is indefinite or indeterminate. In animals, the growth is definite or determinate. It is restricted to certain age period. And here extrinsic growth is observed in glaciers and mountains. See, this is about unicellular growth and multicellular. So this gives you the complete explanation of the growth. Okay, remember and fix it in your mind. And then reproduction, if we see, as I addressed the thing, like reproduction is of two types. It can be asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction, it does not involve the fusion of gametes. There is no fusion of gametes and it is uniparental. Single parent will release out the spores, or single parent will undergo the fragmentation of its body part, and that single fragment will develop into a new body. So there is only involvement of single parent in asexual reproduction. It does not involve the fusion of gametes. There is no fusion of gametes. Offsprings are identical to the parent, and asexual reproduction is completely uniparental. Sexual reproduction involves fusion of gametes. Sexual reproduction will involve fusion of gametes where offsprings will vary genetically from the parents. The offspring varies genetically from the parent and it is biparental. Two parents are involved in the formation of the individual. So, sexual reproduction it involves fusion of two gametes and offsprings varies genetically and it is biparental. This is the key difference between asexual and sexual reproduction. What are different modes of asexual reproduction? First is spores formation from fungi. When you are dealing with the concept of fungi, which comes in biological classification, the major topic you have to stress on is reproduction. In fungi, you will be having sexual reproduction, asexual reproduction, both are facilitated by spores itself. Asexual reproduction are facilitated by certain spores, like the spores which facilitate asexual reproduction in fungi includes asexual spores of fungi. Asexual spores of fungi includes, first is zoospores, which are motile spores. Second, aplanospores, which are non-motile spores. Third, chlamydiospores, which are released during unfavorable conditions. Sporangiospores, and conidia. These are the asexual spores which are released from fungi. Fungi multiply and spread easily due to millions of asexual spores they produce. They are quite resistant structures and they do not damage easily as well. Budding in the yeast, new individuals form from outgrowths of buds. Okay, new individual will form from the outgrowths of buds on the bodies and they mature into organisms. For example, yeast and hydra. So, spores, if you see, spores, best example which is given is fungi. All the asexual spores of the fungi I have listed, you remember it. This will be helpful when you are learning the fungi concept from biological classification chapter. And here budding in the yeast. Budding in the yeast, if you see yeast undergoes budding where from the parental body you can see daughter buds which are originating from the parent body. Example is yeast and hydra. Okay, budding is nothing but the outgrowths on the parent body. Each outgrowth when falling onto the substrata, it develops into a new individual. This is about budding. Next is regeneration in flatworms. The fragmented part of the organism, if this is the fragmented part of the organism, this will separate and this will grow into a new individual and the last part is regenerated. Okay, any part of the body is lost and that fragmented part will develop into a new individual, and in this part where it has lost a fragment and the newly formed fragment you can see immediately, that is regeneration. Look into the theory once. Fragmented parts of the organism, they will regenerate the lost part of their body and they become into the new organism. Next is binary fission. Binary fission is mostly observed in unicellular organisms, like a single cell will undergo division and forms two cells. So, there is immediate karyokinesis and cytokinesis. Without the involvement of any spindle fiber formation. Okay. So, here there is no involvement of any spindle fiber formation. There is no involvement of any spindle apparatus. That is the reason binary fission is also addressed as amitosis. This is also known as amitosis. This is most common form of reproduction in prokaryotes, and it is also observed in few unicellular eukaryotes, for example bacteria and amoeba. Got it? So these are different modes of asexual reproduction. Clear, right? And then, so here you can see the spores which are released from fungi. These are the spores which are released from fungi, and the hydra budding in hydra, these are the small outgrowths. When these outgrowths fall down to the suitable substrata, they will develop into a new individual, and this is the example of regeneration. Where the major plant body is fragmented, each fragment will develop into a new individual, and in this region this will develop the lost part body. Got it? So these are different images that will make your understanding easy, and this table is very important, many a times asked in the exam. If you see, asexual spores observed in fungi, budding seen in yeast and hydra, regeneration observed in planaria or flatworms, and fragmentation is observed in fungi, filamentous algae and protonema of mosses. This table asked multiple times in the questions like match the following type of objective. This is metabolism. Metabolism, in simple terms, it is addressed as the chemical reactions that happen inside the cell which keeps the cell live. Metabolism includes two reactions, one is anabolism, second is catabolism. Anabolism is formation of complex molecules. From simpler molecules, formation of complex molecules is anabolism, and by destructing these complex molecules, releasing out the simpler units and energy, this energy is known as what? Metabolic energy. Metabolic energy, which is used for all the metabolic activities of the cell. Okay? So metabolism is nothing but the chemical reactions that happen inside the cell, which includes two major processes, that is anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism is building up of complex molecules, catabolism is breaking or denaturing these complex molecules into the simpler forms and building up of energy. So anabolism, energy is utilized to combine smaller molecules to yield larger and more complex molecules, for example photosynthesis. Catabolism, molecules are broken down and energy is released, for example broken down food during digestion. Got it? This is anabolism and catabolism. Next, so the sum total of chemical reactions which occur in the coordinated manner to support life is addressed as metabolism. All the living cells, be it unicellular cells or multicellular organisms, in all of the cells metabolism will be there to keep the cell live. Got it? Next, cellular organization. Cellular organization is seen in the complete hierarchy from the unicellular to multicellular organization, from unicellular single cell to tissue level, loose tissue level, organ system level of organization. In all of this cellular organization is observed. What is cellular organization? See this, the phenomena where tissue consists of cells, right? What is a tissue? We have learnt from anatomy, right? What is a tissue? How can you define a tissue as? Tissue is nothing but a group of cells which has common origin and common function. It can vary structurally. Structural similarity can be present or not, okay, but it has common origin and common function, all the cells present in the tissue. Got it? So the properties of the tissue are present where? In the interactions of the cells in it, and the property of an organ is present in the underlying interactions of the tissues present in the organ. So that hierarchy will be the cellular organization, which is very simple. The property of a cell is defined by underlying interactions of the cellular organelles. The property of a tissue is defined by interactions of the cells that are present inside the tissue. The property of an organ is defined by the interactions between the tissues present in the organ. Okay? So that is the phenomena of what? Cellular organization. Look into the theory also once. All living beings are made up of cells only. Cells aggregate to form tissues, which in turn aggregate to form organs. Each cell further consists of several organelles. Organelles interact with each other and for the proper functioning of the cell. It is very organized process. Each organelle is involved in individual function. These functions are performed by cells and this results in cumulative activities of all the organelles. Clear, right? This is about cellular organization. And next is consciousness. Consciousness is also addressed as irritability or sensitivity, which is nothing but response to external stimuli. Any living organisms, be it unicellular or multicellular, any living cell will respond to the external stimuli. That is known as what? Consciousness. Consciousness is response to external stimuli. Response to external stimuli is what? Consciousness. It is the state of awareness of surroundings and response to external stimuli. For examples, if you see sense organs in animals and photoperiodism, that is response of the plant to the sunlight and flowering. Okay, what is photoperiodism? Taking different tenures of sunlight, different plants like short day plants, long day plants and day neutral plants, they will be absorbing the sunlight and they will flower. So, the amount of time that is taking to flower is known as photoperiodism, right. So, photoperiodism is one of the feature that we can say that plants are responding to the external stimuli, that is sunlight, and sense organs in animals. All cells, prokaryotic or eukaryotic, they will respond to the external factors. For example, folding of leaves is seen in Mimosa pudica. This occurs due to external stimulus of touch. Consciousness is again a defining property of all living organisms. Consciousness is the defining property of all the living organisms. Next, this is the diversity, and here we will move on to taxonomy first. I told you taxonomy includes 4 components. First is characterization, second identification, third classification, and fourth is nomenclature. What is characterization? Morphological and all the characters are described. Morphological, anatomical, all the cellular characteristics will be described. Identification, determining the similarities with already known organisms by taking a standard herbaria. Determining the similarities with already known organisms is known as identification. Classification, placing the organism under a particular taxon category. Likewise, we have 7 obligate categories where you are going to learn in this chapter later. And nomenclature, actually third you will come across nomenclature, fourth is classification, okay, giving a proper scientific name. About nomenclature we have to learn in detail under binomial nomenclature, which is proposed by Carolus Linnaeus, wherein he has proposed this through his 2 known works, one book that is Species Plantarum, second book that is Systema Naturae. In Systema Naturae, the binomial nomenclature system, if you see, Carolus has named around 4,400 animal species and 7,700 plant species, wherein generic name, the first letter of the generic name will be capital, first letter of the species name will be small. Okay, generic name will begin with the capital letter, specific epithet will be with small letter. Binomial nomenclature, it includes 2 words. First word is generic name, second one is specific epithet, and when they are printed they should be printed in italics. When they are written they have to be underlined separately. These are the basic rules of binomial nomenclature. So, single scientific name, what are the uses of binomial nomenclature? Single scientific name which is used to replace the multiple vernacular names. Description of any organism, this will enable people to arrive at the same name. This ensures that a name has to be used for more than known organism, and we have already discussed what are the rules of binomial nomenclature. Now, we need to know about the standard codes of nomenclature. Like major organizations, sometimes you will get the questions as abbreviations, wherein ICBN, the standard code for this is what? International Code of Botanical Nomenclature. What does this mean? ICZN, International Code of Zoological Nomenclature. ICVN, International Code of Viral Nomenclature. ICNCP, International Code of Nomenclature for Cultivated Plants. ICNB, International Code for Nomenclature, International Code of Nomenclature for Bacteria. You got it? These are the codes of nomenclature. Then taxonomy. We have learnt about taxonomy. So, to these four characteristic features, if you are considering the evolutionary relationships as well, along with these four features, if you are considering evolutionary relationships as well, along with this, if you are also considering evolutionary relationships, this is known as what? Systematics. Systematics is the study of evolutionary relationships, which is derived from Latin. Taxonomy is derived from Greek, okay, which means the systematic arrangement of organisms. The study of one organism gives information about the whole group. Taxonomy, systematics and classification are often used synonymously, but there is a way more difference, but technically they are not same, because classification is what? Grouping the organisms based on similarities and differences. Grouping organisms based on similarities and differences. Systematics, which includes all the components of taxonomy along with evolutionary relationships, taxonomy includes all the four components, that is characterization, identification, classification, nomenclature is the third component, and classification. Fine, right? And then last, these are the major differences between taxonomy and systematics. Taxonomy is the process of classification based on characteristics. It includes identification, classification and nomenclature. Derived from the Greek taxis, which means arrangement, and nomos means law. There is a narrow scope limited to naming, describing and classifying the organisms and placing them into different taxonomic categories. This is mainly useful, this mainly uses morphological, anatomical, structural characters of classification. When it comes to systematics, what is that we use in the systematics? This is study of different kinds of organisms and their evolutionary relationships as well. This is derived from the Latin systema, which means systematic arrangement, and this is used by Linnaeus in his publication, that is Systema Naturae. There is a broader scope as we are using phylogeny as well. What is phylogeny? Using evolutionary relationships, that is phylogeny. So, evolutionary history is also taken and different diversity patterns are also analyzed via systematics when phylogeny is considered. This focuses on relationships among the organisms, tracing ancestry and evolution over time. This uses all the possible data, morphology, molecular data, genetics, fossils, biogeography to understand evolutionary links. These are the key differences between taxonomy and systematics. Before ending the session, let us take the key takeaways of today's session. Today we have learnt all the fundamental insights of the living world. Second, both fundamental and defining features of living, and then we have learnt about taxonomy, the components involved in taxonomy. From that we have learnt binomial nomenclature in detail, Lastly, we have also focused on systematics and the clear differences between taxonomy and systematics. Got it? And thank you. Tomorrow we will meet up with a new chapter.